श्रुति स्मृति पुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयम् नमामि भगवत्पादम् शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम् शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यम् केशवं वादिरायणम् सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः यद्वारे निखिलानि लिम्पपरिषत् सिद्धिं विधते निशम् श्रीमत्श्रीलसितं जगद्गुरुपदम् नत्वात्मतृप्तिं गताः लोका ज्ञानपयोदपाटनधुरम् श्रीशङ्करं शर्मदं ब्रह्मानन्द सरस्वतीं गुरुवरं ध्यायामि ज्योतिर्मयम् ध्यायामि ज्योतिर्मयम् ध्यायामि ज्योतिर्मयम्।
Jai Gurudev. Swagatam to our weekly Maharishi Gita Satsang on chapter 4, Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. We will be studying shlokas 32 to 36 today, but first I will recap and then we will continue our study. We will do Mala first, Sahana Bhavatu first. Mukesh ji, Sahana Bhavatu.
Jai Gurudev Didi.
Jai Gurudev, Sahana Bhavatu.
Jai Didi. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vadhetamastu Ma Virdishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
अब माला करना 30 और 31 श्लोक का।
जी ओम श्री परमात्मने नमः। यज्ञशिष्टामृत भुजो यान्ति ब्रह्म सनातनम् नायं लोकोऽस्त्य यज्ञस्य कृतोऽन्यः कुरुषत्तम। एवं बहुविधा यज्ञा वितता ब्रह्मणो मुखे कर्मजान् विद्धितान् शर्वन् एवं ज्ञात्वा विमोक्षसे। ओम
Jai Gurudev. So in the last session, we have discussed about yajnas and different types of yajnas. And this was in verses 24 to 31 of chapter 4. In verse 24, the word Brahman is used 6 times. Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavihi, Brahmagnau, Brahmanahutam, Brahmaiva tena gantavyam, Brahma karma samadhina. So let's talk for a minute about what Brahman is. Brahman is Paramatma. It is the cosmic reality, the ultimate reality. We also call Brahman as Akshara, that is imperishable and transcendental absolute being. It knows no variation or change in its status. It is changeless and eternal. It's always there. Brahman is Sarvajna, means omniscient, knows everything. Sarva Shakti means omnipotent, can do anything he wants, he or she. Brahman has no gender. So for our own understanding, we say he or she, but Brahman doesn't have any gender. It's not male or female. And Brahman is Sarvavyapi. Omnipresent means present everywhere. And we have studied in chapter 2, in 24th verse, Brahman is described as Achedya, means uncleavable. Like if you put a knife in the air and you draw, nothing happens to the air. You cannot cleave it, you cannot destroy it. Adahya means it cannot be burned because it is so subtle, just like you cannot burn space. And it's akledya, it cannot be wetted. And all this is because it is transcendental, it is beyond the sense perception. And verse 24 says that Brahman is the act of offering. It's also the oblation poured by Brahman into fire, that is also Brahman. To Brahman alone must he go, who is fixed in Brahman through action. So this verse explains us the connection between Brahman and action. Because Brahman is transcendental and action is in the field of relativity. So the first thing to remember about this shloka, it's a very important shloka in this chapter, that we do not try to hold the idea in our mind that everything is Brahman. If we do that, it is on the surface thinking level. But the shloka is talking about the consciousness aspect of it. It's not on the surface level of thinking, it's on the level of experience. This shloka talks about that level of consciousness which realizes oneness of existence in all diversity of action. It is unity, and it's on the level of experience. So in this verse and the following verses, different aspects of action of yajna are discussed. And it is explained that all aspects are Brahman. On this, even though all the aspects are Brahman, on the surface level, when you see offering is offering, when you're doing it, you are doing it. You know, you see that on the surface level also, but everything is Brahman on the level of consciousness of the performer, one who is doing the yajna. So the level of consciousness of the one who is doing yajna his level of consciousness is Brahmi Chetana. He is intent on Brahman, but at the same time, actions continue on the surface sensory level. And that happens by gunas, as we have known. So the purpose of the shloka is to describe the relationship of action to cosmic consciousness. All actions are part of that consciousness, of cosmic consciousness. So they are none other than Brahman. But the thing to remember is, such actions do not bind us. We have studied in the past that when you experience transcendence and you're engaged in action, the actions are not binding because you experience yourself as separate from activity. So after this 24th shloka, we have studied that there are many types of yajnas. Some yogis perform yajna by worshipping the gods, and some exercise sense control to perform the yajna. And one such yajna is what we all do, transcendental meditation. In meditation, when the mind experiences the subtler levels of thought, the activity of senses decreases and finally stops. Breath also decreases. It becomes very refined and comes to a standstill. Then you are in a state of yoga, union of mind with Atma. So here there are two things. First, you transcend and you experience yoga, and in this context, it's called as the fire of yoga. You light the fire of yoga first, and then you offer activities of senses and prana into this fire. So then what happens automatically? We have the sense control, because all the sense activity decreases and it stops. So then you are having control over the senses. Senses don't have control over you. So in this context, again, it's important to remember that self-control is the result of enlightenment. When you are enlightened, all the senses come under control. And it's not the other way around. Enlightenment is not the result of sense control. You don't get enlightened by controlling your senses from the outside. The sense control comes from within, and it comes spontaneously as you grow in higher states of consciousness. And after that, some other yajnas are also mentioned, such as giving away money, doing Vedic rites and rituals, doing austerity, fasting, and all those. All of these lead to purification of mind and body. So naturally, they are evolutionary. And some try to do yajnas by doing pranayama. They just do pranayama without TM. So that can be a little bit tedious and rigorous, but we don't have the problem. When we do TM, automatically breath comes under control and becomes very refined, and we don't have to go through the rigorous practice of pranayama only. And by doing all these yajnas, it leads to purification of mind and body. And as a result of that, all the sins are cast away. So that is the benefit of doing all these yajnas. And as we have seen, some are a little bit more difficult, but we don't have to concern ourselves with them. We follow the easy way, that is transcendental meditation. And there's a beautiful quote given in one of these last shlokas, and that is in the Dhyana Bindu Upanishad. Yadi Shaila Samam Papam Vistirnam Bahuyojanam vidyate dhyana yogena nanyo bheda kadachana. The meaning is, a huge mountain of sins extending for miles is destroyed by union brought about by transcendental meditation, without which there is no other way. I wanted to repeat this even though we did it last time, because it is such a beautiful shloka from the Upanishad, which gives us the hope that with our TM, we are able to burn out the mountains of karma. And this is, easy and fast way to be purified and to rise in higher states of consciousness. So now that we have studied and, refreshed our memory about the yajnas, after that, the result was explained. The result of doing all these yajnas. Why are we doing all these yajnas? So yajna is a process of purification. And so after yajna, the mind and body are more pure. So when the yajna is over, one reaches a higher level of bliss consciousness because you are purified now. And Sri Krishna Bhagavan calls this as nectar and says that those who experience this nectar, they reach Brahman. So when you rest after your program, you have that good feeling, and that is called as nectar. So that is why our instruction when we learn TM was that we start with half a minute silence and then end with 2 minutes of silence. After we stop the mantra, we just sit 2 minutes quietly without saying the mantra. So during this time, you have that good feeling where the nectar is produced and you're really enjoying, allowing that nectar to flow in your system. So that rest after meditation is extremely important to rise in higher states of consciousness, because during that time, you are partaking of that the nectar, which is the result of the yajna of transcendental meditation. And then the last point that was made in the last discussion was that if one does not perform yajna of transcendental meditation or any other yajnas that are evolutionary, he will not be successful neither in this world nor in the world hereafter. So that was the summary of what we studied in the last session. Now we will begin study of shlokas from 32 to 36. And first we will do the Sanskrit shloka. I would like to request the Pandits to recite 32, please.
जय गुरुदेव दीदी.
Jai Gurudev, go ahead.
32 ना दीदी?
Yes.
जी. ओम एवं बहुविधा यज्ञा वितता ब्रह्मणो मुखे कर्मजान् विद्धितान् सर्वान् एवं ज्ञात्वा विमोक्षसे. ओम.
I'll read in Sanskrit one more time and then English translation, and then Anitaji will read the commentary.
Hemaji, Jai Gurudev. Hemaji, sorry to interrupt, Jai Gurudev. I won't be able to read the 32 words. I have not my specs with me. I'm so sorry. So I've sent a message. Sunita will read it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Hemaji.
Yes.
Evam bahuvidha yajna vitata brahmano mukhe Karmajan vidhitan sarvan. Evam jnatva vimokshase. In this way, yajnas of many kinds are set forth in the words of Veda. Know them all as born of action. Thus, knowing you will find release. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. The Vedas speak of various kinds of yajna, which help the process of the evolution of man at different levels of life. Sri Krishna Bhagavan means that the knowledge of the various yajnas as found in the Vedas is complete in itself. It has only to be adopted. To convey this, he says, know them all as born of action. Action is necessary to perform yajna. Unless they are performed, yajnas will not yield any result. Theoretically, knowledge of them has its value, but does not in itself carry the fruits of yajna. The importance of action is emphasized here. The phrase, know them all as born of action, suggests another point. Shri Krishna Bhagavan wants to make it very clear to Arjuna that the knowledge of yajna, which he has been teaching in the previous verses and which has the authority of the Vedas, is essential for success in this world and hereafter. But at the same time, he indicates that this is not the final knowledge which will free him from bondage. Something more has to be known. While continuing in the activity of yajna, Arjuna should bear in mind that it is all in the field of activity and that reality is transcendental. So one has not to remain permanently in the field of the activity of yajna. The knowledge that yajna is activity and that reality is transcendental will certainly free a man. Here is an important point for the practice of transcendental meditation. The medium of attention must enable the mind to reach the transcendent and realize the absolute state of being. If the aspirant is not aware of this fact, then during his practice of meditation, yajna, when he finds that the medium of attention has disappeared, he will feel confused. To save him from such confusion, Sri Krishna Bhagavan says that all the practices which bring enlightenment, yajnas, are in the field of activity and that the goal is to transcend that field, to arrive at transcendental consciousness, gain cosmic consciousness, and ultimately rise to the consummation of all action in the state of unity in God consciousness. The following verse throws more light on this point. Jai Gurudev.
So here in this shloka, the role of importance of action is explained in order to gain liberation, moksha.
Ma'am, Hemaji, video is off.
Ah. Okay. Vedas describe many yajnas as we have just seen. And all these yajnas are born of action, which means when you are doing yajna, it is some activity, either on the physical level or on the mental level. On the gross level, you are pouring something into the Agni Kund. So that is on the physical level. It is action. And when we do meditation, the activity is subtle. It is a mental activity. But nevertheless, it is still activity. So all yajnas are activity. They are in the relative field. But this is the way to reach, to go beyond relativity. So this point needs to be understood, because when the mantra stops, mental activity stops in meditation, and then there is nothing, no mantra, no thought. So Maharishi said, one can get a little bit confused and wonder what is going on. So the intellectual understanding of this situation, that all yajnas are in the field of relative, and that this becomes the means to experience transcendent, which is beyond relative. And then when you go beyond relative and you experience the ultimate reality that is transcendental, this will free the man from bondage. And this is the way to gain liberation. So that's why the point is emphasized that we do not stay in the field of activity. We do not stay in the field of relativity all the time. So we are in the relative, and then we transcend, experience transcendence, we come out into the relative again. So both are necessary. And then this will lead to liberation or moksha. So can we have scientific research, please? It is pretty short. So this study shows that there is increased EEG coherence during yogic flying. And we have discussed this many times. But in this one, this EEG coherence was compared to the controls who were not really doing yogic flying. They were trying to imitate the movements of yogic flying. And in such controls, there was no increase in EEG coherence because they're not really doing yogic flying. So this shows us the value of yogic flying that increases EEG coherence. Okay. I'll stop here and take any questions, please. Okay, if there are no questions, we will move on to the next one. I would like to request the Pandits to recite 33rd shloka, please.
Jai Gurudev Didi.
Jai Gurudev. 33.
Ji Didi. Om Shreyan Dravyamayadyagnan Jnana Yajna Parantapa Sarvam Karmakhilam Partha Jnane Parisamapyate. Om Jai Gurudev.
Preyan Dravyamayat Yajnat Jnana Yajna Parantapa Sarvam Karmakhilam Partha Jnane Parisamapyate. better than the yajna through material means is the yajna of knowledge, O scorcher of enemies. All action without exception, O Partha, culminates in knowledge.
Hemaji, I'm back. I'll read it, okay?
Okay.
Jai Gurudev. Okay. So yagya through material means, see verse 28. Yagya of knowledge means action that leads to knowledge. Yagya of material means is performed through material offerings, whereas yagya of knowledge is performed through mental activity leading to the state of transcendental consciousness, and also the mental activity of understanding of the transcendent. Knowledge in its content is God consciousness, which develops from the state of cosmic consciousness, which in turn develops from the knowledge, understanding, and experience of transcendental consciousness. Action is a means of evolution, and evolution gains its highest peak when man has attained unity with God. God consciousness, in the state of fulfillment, there is nothing that he need to do. He has arrived at the goal of all actions. All means come to an end as a matter of course when the goal is reached. Any form of yoga aims at a certain degree of purification. When pure consciousness has been permanently achieved, when the self has been realized as separate from activity, and when God consciousness has been gained, then the extreme limit of purification have been achieved. Having achieved it, a man naturally feels fulfilled in eternal freedom. This state of fulfillment is the goal of all action and the goal of all yajna. That is why Sri Krishna Bhagavan says that knowledge is the field towards which all actions converge and which they finally become merged. All action without exception, O Partha, culminates in knowledge. Sri Krishna Bhagavan's discourse is an example of great psychological skill. Gradually, from first verse 23 to this verse, he builds up the importance of yajna, the path of enlightenment. When he has established the greatness of it, he suddenly says that this is all in the field of action, thereby implying first, it is within the reach of every man, and secondly, that no man should remain held up within the field of action or yajna, for it is not the final goal of life. Having pointed this out, Sri Krishna Bhagavan in this verse immediately concludes his account with the statement that the knowledge is the goal of all actions. Yajna through material means can be best raised at the level of consciousness in the relative field of life. Yajna of knowledge transforms the entire human mechanism into a means by which the divine expresses itself in the world, because there could be no state of evolution greater than this. The yajna of knowledge, leading as it does to this state, is better than yajna through the material means. When Lord says stress on knowledge as against action, he addresses Arjuna as scorcher of enemies, as one engaged in vigorous activity. This is to show him that it is through knowledge that life can be made most dynamic. And in this verse which follows, Sri Krishna Bhagavan indicates a direct way to search for this knowledge. Jai Gurudev.
This shloka tells us about the difference between dravya yajna, that is yajna by material means, and jnana yajna, that is yajna of knowledge. So in jnana yajna means action that leads to knowledge. Yajna of material means is performed through material things like giving away money and things like that. Whereas yajna of knowledge, jnana yajna, is performed through mental activity. Now again, with transcendental meditation, when we transcend, we experience Atma. Then we get Atma Jnana. It's a very common word used, often to express that when you experience Atma, it is knowledge. This is Jnana Yajna, Yajna of knowledge. Knowledge in its content is God consciousness. Because we are saying when we transcend, we experience that silence of Atma. That is God consciousness. And all actions end in this knowledge, regardless of what action. So the goal of all action is to reach a state of non-action. And that point is made very clear in this shloka. And this state of fulfillment is the goal of all action. Therefore, the yajna of knowledge is better than the yajna through material means. We will not do scientific research on this because we have done that many times. In many studies, we have seen that with the regular practice of transcendental meditation, academic performance improves a lot. So we will not repeat that. So I'll stop for any questions. If there are no questions, we will move on to the next verse. I would like to request the Pandits to recite shloka number 34, please.
जी दीदी जय गुरुदेव
Jai Gurudev.
ॐ तद्विद्धि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदीक्ष्यन्ति ते ज्ञानं ज्ञानिनस्तत्त्वदर्शिनः ॐ
Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadeksyanti te jnanam jnaninastattvadarshinah. Know this. Through homage, repeated inquiry, and service, the men of knowledge who have experienced reality will teach you knowledge. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. Here is the process of gaining enlightenment from the enlightened. By homage is meant submission or surrender. This serves to produce a state of receptivity. In the state of submission, the heart and mind set aside their own ways of feeling and thinking. They become free from all the overshadows their potentiality and become fully receptive to the enlightened man. The embodiment of Gita quite naturally of his limited individuality and overcoming in him any resistance that prevents him from opening himself to the cosmic being. In this verse, the seeker of truth is advised to submit to the enlightened man and not merely to have a sense of submission to the cosmic being. This is because submission to omnipresent being, having no concrete point of focus, remains abstract and indefinite and does not crystallize into concrete results. Direct submission of the individual intellect to the cosmic intelligence takes place only in the state of transcendence. In the field of relativity, submission on the level of thinking and understanding demands a specific point of focus if it is to be valid and productive of results. The second point in the process of reaching enlightenment is that the intellect should be alert so that discrimination or the ability to understand different aspects of reality is sharp. This is necessary because the state of full enlightenment includes a clear understanding of reality. And this again can only be accomplished by an intellect which is alert and sharp. Discriminating and decisive. The state of intellectual alertness conflicts with the state of submission. This conflict is resolved by what the Lord calls, or Sri Krishna Bhagavan calls, service. Service means action in accordance with the desire of the master. A sense of service has little to do with the nature of the work itself, but is primarily concerned with the fulfillment of the master's desires. If the master is pleased, service is successful. If he is pleased by the accomplishment of the work, then the service is done and the work has accomplished its purpose. If in the middle of the work, the master wants it undone, then the success of the service will demand obedience. This art of service covers those states of submission and alertness of intellect which are necessary for enlightenment. A right sense of service trains the mind of the seeker to adjust itself to the status of the integrated mind of the enlightened man. In order to be successful in the art of service, one has to adjust one's mind, one's likes and dislikes, to bring them into accord with the mind of the master. One does something and then closely watches to see whether he is pleased or displeased. Then one adjusts one's actions accordingly. This does more than merely hold together submission and alertness of intellect. By adjusting itself to the likes and dislikes of the enlightened cosmic mind of the master, the ignorant mind of the seeker gradually gains that same status. Thus, we find submission, questioning, and service. All these three are complementary and create a situation favorable to enlightenment. Commenting on this verse, Shankara says, know by what means it is gained. Having approached the teachers humbly, fall down and prostrate yourself before them, paying them prolonged homage. Ask them what is bondage and what is liberation, what is wisdom and what ignorance. Perform service for the master. Pleased by these and other signs of reverence, the teachers who know the truth from the scriptures and have also realized it through direct personal experience will declare to you this knowledge. The result of this knowledge is shown in the next verse. Jai Gurudev.
This is a very beautiful verse. And this verse describes the process of gaining enlightenment from the enlightened Guru. And it says that three things are required. One is surrender, second is inquiry, and third is service. So the first requirement is surrender. In the translation, the word homage is used. Homage means surrender. And then when you surrender, you become receptive to the Guru. So when you surrender, you don't have a mind of your own anymore. The mind had been put aside, your likes and dislikes, nothing matters. You just don't think about yourself or anything. And you just are completely in tune with the master. And because of that situation, because of this complete surrender, there is no resistance in you to gain knowledge. And why this point becomes important is because of this second requirement. The second requirement says that intellect should be alert, sharp, and decisive, and have the discrimination to understand the different aspects of reality. And so to be able to be sharp and decisive and to have that discriminative quality of the intellect, then there should not be any resistance. And that you accomplish by surrendering. So then the first one, surrender, takes care of the second requirement, that is the inquiry. So as we have seen, Arjuna is asking so many questions and getting knowledge. And then the third requirement is service. Some of you probably saw in the Ramayana and Mahabharata TV serials that Rama, he goes to Gurukul, to his guru's ashram, Vasishtha. And there, Sri Rama and his brothers, they perform service to Guru and to Guru Mata, to his wife also. And we have seen they bring sticks for cooking, they take care of the cows, they do gardening, they clean the house, they wash their clothes, etc. So that's one thing, that you do all these chores in the house. And the second thing is you also fulfill master's desires. For example, in Sri Krishna, the TV series, they show that at the end of gaining knowledge, at the end of their stay at Gurukul, Sri Krishna Bhagwan's guru at Sandipani ashram, he says, I want my dead son back. For ordinary people, it's difficult, but because it was Sri Krishna, he will go and bring the dead son back from the ocean. The ocean had, swallowed the guru's son. So Sri Krishna Bhagwan brings back his son. So like that, you fulfill your master's desires. Whatever the guru wants, you do that. Even though you may not understand why Guru is telling you. In the commentary, Maharishi gave an example. He said, first Guru may tell you to do something, and you are in the process of accomplishing it, and you are done halfway, and then Guru says, stop it. So you just stop it. You don't ask Guru, oh, why did you tell me to do this in the first place? Now, why are you asking me to stop? No. No such question. You just follow Guru's instruction. So that's where the value of complete surrender comes. You don't know what the Guru is thinking. You're not at the level of Guru's level of consciousness, but you don't question him that way. So that is service and fulfilling Guru's desires. And when the Guru is pleased with your behavior, then knowledge begins to flow. And how do you know that your service is successful? When the master is pleased, you know that your service is successful. And as a result of all this, surrender, inquiry, and service, something very nice happens. And what is that? By adjusting to the likes and dislikes of the enlightened cosmic mind of the master, the ignorant seeker, his mind gradually gains the same status as the master, as the guru. That's a wonderful thing to happen. Hence, all these three are needed. They are complementary to each other, and they create a situation that is favorable to enlightenment. So there's a nice piece of scientific research on this. Sunita, can you please display the scientific research? Okay. The study shows that in practitioners of Transcendental Meditation Program, they reported greater respect for traditional, religious, and cultural values in comparison with the non-meditating students. This I liked. It is significant because in the modern world, nowadays, we find that some people are turning against our Vedic culture because of misunderstanding of our scriptures, and also because of aping the West. And this study is showing that with the regular practice of transcendental meditation, we are moving towards Indianization of India. We have such beautiful Vedic heritage, but we are not recognizing the value of the Vedic culture, Vedic civilization. There is a statement in Hindi, Ghar ka murgi dal barabar. You know, ours is land of Veda, but we are not valuing Vedic knowledge. So, because the study is showing that some people are showing more, a practitioner of transcendental meditation are showing more respect for Vedic heritage. They are giving more value to the Vedic culture. So that's a good indication, and I like that. Okay, so I'll stop here for any questions. Go ahead, please. Okay, so let's move on to the next shloka. I would like to request the Pandits to recite shloka number 35, please.
जी दीदी
जी दीदी यद् ज्ञात्वा न पुनर्मोहम् एवं यास्यसि पाण्डव येन भूतान्यशेषेण द्रक्ष्यस्यात्मन्यथो मयि ॐ जय गुरुदेव
यज्ञात्वा न पुनर्मोहम् एवं यास्यसि पाण्डव येन भूतान्यशेषेण द्रक्ष्यस्यात्मन्यथो मयि. Knowing this, O son of Pandu, you will no more fall into such delusion. For through this, you will see all beings in yourself and also in me. Jai Gurudev.
Sundari Ramtaji. Jai Gurudev. Knowing this, having gained the knowledge given in the preceding verses, you will no more fall into such delusion. Here, Sri Krishna Bhagavan gives Arjuna the technique of rising above the possibility of delusion. The field of the duality of life alone can be the field of delusion. When in the state of cosmic consciousness, one has realized the self as separate from activity. And when this state has developed to the eternal unity of God consciousness, then you see all beings in yourself and also in you. In this state of oneness of life, oneness of Godness, God consciousness, there is no trace of duality and therefore there is no possibility of delusion. The teaching is cultivate the state of unity in God consciousness. Cultivate this state of knowledge so that you will no more fall into such delusion. The word such is highly significant. It indicates a special state of delusion. Arjuna's delusion in particular, delusion in the state of sattva. Thereby, Sri Krishna Bhagavan silently educates Arjuna in the philosophy of delusion. Any delusion experienced in the state of tamas can be overcome with the increase of rajas. Likewise, delusion experienced in the state of rajas can be overcome with the rise of sattva. But a delusion in the state of sattva, as in Arjuna's case, cannot be overcome unless one transcends the field of sattva and gains transcendental consciousness. Here, the qualities of the heart and mind find a common goal, thereby dissolving the duality of their separate existences and rising above the possibility of delusion. It is not physically possible, however, to remain in the transcendent at all times. Therefore, it is necessary to make this transcendental consciousness permanent and to rise to the state of cosmic consciousness. In this state of cosmic consciousness, one experiences one's self as separate from activity. It might appear that in this state, the one was living a duality, the duality of being and activity. But this type of duality in which the self remains detached from everything is free from the possibility of delusion. But Sri Krishna Bhagavan wishes Arjuna to rise above duality, even of this nature. In order that he may do so, he emphasizes the importance of gaining knowledge of unity in God consciousness, which results from devotion in the state of cosmic consciousness. By the practice of the teaching in the previous verse, the heart and mind of the seeker are automatically refined to become capable of devotion. This devotion develops God consciousness, in which unity becomes a living reality of life, and the possibility of any kind of duality is completely eliminated. You will see all beings in yourself and also in me. When one sees through green spectacles, then everything looks green. When through knowledge the self is realized as separate from activity and self consciousness becomes permanent in the state of cosmic consciousness, then everything is naturally experienced in the awareness of the self. And when this permanent state of self consciousness or cosmic consciousness has been transformed through devotion into God consciousness, then everything is naturally experienced in the awareness of God. Every experience is through God consciousness. Everything is experienced and understood in the light of God, in terms of God, in God. Seeing all beings includes knowledge of the whole field of the universe constituted by the three gunas, and seeing me means seeing Sri Krishna Bhagavan presiding over both the absolute and the relative. Thus, seeing all beings in yourself and also in me implies having a complete knowledge of both the absolute and relative fields of the relationship between them and of God presiding over them both. Seeing all beings in the self is the start of the transformation of cosmic consciousness into God consciousness. And this transformation comes to completion when all beings are seen in God. First, All beings are seen in self, and then the self is seen in God. That is why Sri Krishna Bhagavan says, you will see all beings in yourself and also in me. The two ideas in one phrase not only describes the two states, but also the sequence in which they develop. In the state of cosmic consciousness, the self is experienced as separate from activity. This state of life is perfect, non-attachment, is based on bliss consciousness, by virtue of which the qualities of the heart have gained their most complete development. Universal love then dominates the heart, which begins to overflow with the love of God. The silent ocean of bliss, the silent ocean of love, begins to rise in waves of devotion. The heart, in its state of eternal contentment, begins to move, and this begins to draw everything together and eliminate the gulf of separation between the self and activity. The union of all diversity in the self begins to grow. The intensity of this union cultures man's consciousness, which begins to find everything inseparable from the self. And this is how, in the most natural way, all activity in the state of cosmic consciousness finds everything in itself. This happens on the way to God consciousness, which in its completeness absorbs even the self containing all things. Being separate themselves from the Supreme Being by means of Prakriti. This waves remove life is dominated by the light of consciousness, which established eternity in the ephemeral world. This seeing of everything in God is not restricted to the limitations of vision. It is on the level of life as a whole. It is on that high level of life which corresponds to the life of God Himself. Fortunate is man that he can rise to the life of God. Jai Gurudev.
So this shloka is telling us how by serving the Guru, we get the knowledge. And this knowledge will help us not to fall into delusion. So what does delusion or moha mean? Moha means thinking that anatma is atma, thinking that your body is atma. And they don't have any clue of what atma is. They don't have atma jnana, and they don't have any understanding or experience of atma. They're always in the relative, in the duality. And so that is the moha. That's a big disadvantage, because they're only in the relative and not knowing anything about the transcendental absolute reality. That's a big loss. That is something they're missing out on, because they are under this delusion that everything that's all. Life is about all the relative. So that is the moha, delusion. That is ignorance, in other words. So by gaining knowledge from the master, one does not fall into this delusion. He comes out of this delusion. And so that is to the great benefit of the ignorant person. So when we go beyond duality, we experience unity of Atma. And we are established in unity. We are in cosmic consciousness. So we are beyond delusion. Then something very nice happens. Two things happen. One is you will see all beings in yourself. And the second thing is, then you see everything in God. There is a sequence to it. First, you will see all beings in yourself, and then you see everything in God. So this is a little bit of a tricky point. So let's try to understand what that means. First, let us see how, after rising in cosmic consciousness, one can see all beings in oneself. Maharishi said in the commentary, when one sees through green glasses, then everything looks green. The quality of experience depends on the state of consciousness. For example, when you are happy and cheerful, everything looks happy and cheerful. When you're sad and depressed, everything looks sad. Similarly, when you are established in transcendence, you experience that divinity. And when you bring this divinity out into the world, everything is seen as divine. You are divine. And so you see divinity of Atma in everything. It is like that. And then, how do you see everything in God? So once you reach that state of cosmic consciousness, you are growing in devotion. And then as you rise in consciousness from cosmic consciousness to God consciousness, then everything is experienced and understood in the light of God. Why? Because now you have the knowledge of the universe, which consists of the three gunas. So you have knowledge of transcendence by transcending, and then now you have the knowledge of relative in the universe, which is constituted by the three gunas. And now you have the knowledge and understanding and experience that Bhagavan presides over both absolute and relative. He's not just in the transcendence, but Bhagavan is in the relative also. Now you have that knowledge because you got it from your guru. So in cosmic consciousness, when you experience yourself as separate from activity, it is a state of non-attachment. It is a state of bliss consciousness. It is a state of fulfillment. And for that reason, the qualities of heart begin to grow because you're completely fulfilled. And then your heart begins to expand and grow. And then you find that your heart is flowing and overflowing with love of God and universal love. You love everything and anybody. Somebody said, I even like people who don't like me. So this brings everything together and bridges the gap between the self and activity that you find in the initial stages of cosmic consciousness. Then, because of the knowledge that God presides over absolute and relative, then you see everything in God because you know God is in the relative, God is in the absolute. And beings separate themselves from God by Supreme Being, by gunas, because in the relative, it's all gunas. The gunas are separating the individual from the transcendent. But this separation is not there anymore when you realize that God is in absolute and God is in the relative. It's all one unity. So I'll stop here. We will not do scientific research because we have already covered the whatever point that they were going to make. So I'll stop here for questions, please. No questions? Okay. So now we will do a few minutes of group meditation, and then we will have chapter 4 recitation by our Vedic Pandits. So let's sit comfortably, close eyes, and meditate. Jai Gurudev. Jai Gurudev. Now I would like to request the Vedic Pandits to recite chapter 4, please.
दीदी जय गुरुदेव।
Jai Gurudev.
ॐ पार्थाया प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन प्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुशं ददामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम्। ॐ श्री परमात्मने नमः। अथ चतुर्थोऽध्यायः। श्रीभगवानुवाच इमं विवस्वते योगं प्रोक्तवाहनमव्ययं विवस्वान्मनवे प्राह मनिरुक्ता कवि ब्रवीत्। एवं परम्परा प्राप्तिम् इमं राजर्षयो विदुः सकाले नेह महता योगो नष्टः परन्तप स एवायं मया तेज्य योगः प्रोक्तः पुरातनः भक्तोऽसि मे सखा चेति रहस्यं ह्येतदुत्तमम्। अर्जुनोवाच अपरं भवतो जन्म परं जन्म विवस्वतः कथमेतद्विजानीयाम् त्वमादौ प्रोक्तवानिति। श्रीभगवानुवाच बहूनि मे व्यतीतानि जन्मानि तव चार्जुन तान्यहं वेद सर्वाणि न त्वं वेत्थ परन्तप। अजोऽपि षण्णप्यात्मा भूतानामीश्वरोऽपि सन् प्रकृतिं स्वामधिष्ठाय सम्भवाम्यात्ममायया। यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानमधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम्। परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय सम्भवामि युगे युगे। जन्म कर्म च मे दिव्यम् एवं यो वेत्ति तत्त्वतः त्यक्त्वा देहं पुनर्जन्म नैति मामेति सोऽर्जुन। वीतरागभयक्रोधा मन्मया मामुपाश्रिताः बहवो ज्ञानतपसा भूता मद्भावमागताः ये यथा मां प्रपद्यन्ते तां तथैव भजाम्यहम्। मम वर्तमानुवर्तन्ते मनुष्याः पार्थ सर्वशः काङ्क्षतः कर्मणां सिद्धिं यजन्ति यः देवताः क्षिप्रं हि मानुषे लोके सिद्धिर्भवति कर्मजा चातुर्वर्ण्यं मया सृष्टं गुणकर्म विभागशः तस्य कर्तारमपि मां विद्यकर्तारमप्ययम् न मां कर्माणि लिम्पन्ति न मे कर्मफलिष्प्रहा इति मां योऽभिजानाति कर्मभिर्न स बध्यते एवं ज्ञात्वा कृतं कर्म पूर्वैरपि मुमुक्षुभिः कुरु कर्मैव तस्मात् त्वं पूर्वतरं कृतं किं कर्मेति कवयोऽप्यप्रमोहिताः तत्ते कर्म प्रवक्ष्यामि यज्ञात्वा मोक्षसे शुभात् कर्मणो ह्यपि बोधव्यं च विकर्मणः अकर्मणश्च बोधव्यं गहना कर्मणो गतिः कर्मण्यकर्म यः पश्येत् अकर्मणि च कर्म यः स बुद्धिमान् मनुष्येषु स युक्तः कृष्णकर्मकृत् यस्य सर्वेषामारम्भाः कामसङ्कल्पवर्जिताः ज्ञानाग्निदग्धकर्माणं तमाहुः पण्डितं बुधाः त्यक्त्वा कर्मफलासङ्गं नित्यत्यक्तो निराश्रयः कर्मण्यभिप्रवृत्तोऽपि नैव किञ्चित् करोति सः निराशीर्यत चित्तात्मा त्यक्तसर्वपरिग्रहः शारीरं केवलं कर्म कुर्वन्नाप्नोति किल्बिषम् यदच्छालावसन्तुष्टो द्वन्द्वातीतो विमत्सरः समः सिद्धावसिद्धौ च हित्वापि न निबध्यते गतसङ्गस्य मुक्तस्य ज्ञानावस्थितचेतसः यज्ञायाचरतः कर्म समग्रं प्रबलीयते ब्रह्मार्पणं ब्रह्माग्नौ ब्रह्मणाहुतं ब्रह्मैव तेन गन्तव्यं ब्रह्मकर्म समाधिना द्वैवमेवापरे यज्ञं योगिनः पर्युपासते ब्रह्माग्नवपरे यज्ञं यज्ञेनैवोपजुह्वति श्रोत्रादीनीन्द्रियाण्यन्ये संयमाग्निषु जुह्वति शब्दादीन् विषयाण्यन्य इन्द्रियाग्निषु जुह्वति सर्वाणीन्द्रियकर्माणि प्राणकर्माणि चापरे आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नौ जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते दिव्ययज्ञास्तपो यज्ञा योगयज्ञास्तथा परे स्वाध्यायज्ञानयज्ञाश्च यतयः संसितव्रताः अपाने जुह्वति प्राणं प्राणे पानं तथा परे प्राणापानगतिरुद्ध्वा प्राणायामपरायणाः अपरे नियताहाराः प्राणान् प्राणेषु जुह्वति सर्वेप्येते यज्ञविदो यज्ञक्षपदकल्मषाः यज्ञशिष्टामृतभुजो यान्ति ब्रह्म सनातनं नायं लोकोऽस्ति यज्ञस्य कुतोऽन्यः पुरुषोत्तम एवं बहुविधा यज्ञा विततः ब्रह्मणो मुखे कर्मजान् विद्युतान् सर्वान् एवं ज्ञात्वा विमुक्षसे श्रेयान् दिव्यमयात् यज्ञात् ज्ञानयज्ञः परन्तपः शरवं कर्माखिलं पार्थ ज्ञाने परिसमाप्यते तद्विद्धि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदेक्षन्ति ते ज्ञानं ज्ञानिनस्तत्त्वदर्शिनः यज्ञात्वा न पुनर्मोहं एवं यास्यसि पाण्डव येन भूतान्यशेषेण रक्षस्यात्मन्यथो मयि अपि चेदसि पापेभ्यः सर्वेभ्यः पापकृत्तमः सर्वज्ञानप्लवेनैव व्रजिनं संतरिष्यसि यथैधांसि समिद्धोऽग्निर्भस्मसा कुरुतेऽर्जुन ज्ञानाग्निः सर्वकर्माणि भस्मसात् कुरुते तथा न हि ज्ञानेन सदृशं पवित्रमिह विद्यते तत्त्वयं योगसंसिद्ध कालेनात्मनि विन्दति श्रद्धावान् लभते ज्ञानं तत्परा संयतेन्द्रियः ज्ञानं लब्ध्वा परां शान्तिरतिरेणाधिगच्छति अज्ञाश्च श्रद्धधानश्च संशयात्मा विनश्यति नायं लोकोऽस्ति न परो न सुखं संशयात्मनः योगसन्न्यस्तकर्माणं ज्ञानसच्छिन्न संशयम् आत्मवन्तं न कर्माणि निबध्नन्ति धनञ्जय तस्माद् ज्ञानसम्भूतं रत्सं ज्ञानासीनात्मनः चित्त्वेनं संशयं योगम् आतिष्ठोतिष्ठ भारत ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुन संवादे ज्ञानकर्म संन्यास योगो नाम चतुर्थोऽध्याय ॐ श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु।
Shanti Path, please.
हरि ओम यो शान्तिरन्तरिक्षगुं शान्तिः पृथिवी शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोगदयः शान्तिः वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्क्षुभे देवाः शान्तिर्ब्रह्म शान्ति सर्वगुं शान्ति शान्तिरेव शान्तिः सामा शान्तिरेधि यतो यतः समीहसे ततो नो अभयं कुरु सन्नः कुरु प्रजाभ्यो भयन्नः पशुभ्यः ओम शांति शांति शांति। जय गुरुदेव।
Jai Gurudev. All can come on cameras now. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Sunita, for display. Shanti. Thank you, Anita ji, for reading. And thank you to our Vedic Pandits for reciting Gita so beautifully. And Jai Gurudev to Happy Girl. We will meet next week, same time. So we will cover about 4 shlokas, I think. And then the session after that will be our last session on 4th chapter.
Jai Gurudev.
Okay. So, Jai Gurudev, I'll end the meeting now.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev, Manish. Okay, I'll end the meeting now.